Fingers crossed. It says the Hangout is on the air, and I'm going to believe it because it says it's on the air. So, we are live, and this is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. We're doing a European time-friendly one, so it's a little bit earlier for me. And joining me is Brian from Ireland.
Hello, how's it going?
And Jani, not feeling too well, but Jani out in Finland. Take care of yourself, Jani.
So the Europeans outnumber the Americans.
Yes. Well, Jerod was going to join us, Jerod Lycett, that's Arenlor, but he's going to be watching. So we have an even split, at least in spirit. Now, what we have, what I got in the lineup, and I'm ready to add anything anybody wants to throw in, we got a story about Apple and Ireland. Is that a match made in heaven, I wonder? I don't know. They've got like $1 trillion or something, probably in some kind of a holding company in Ireland. And
I think they could buy Ireland. I think Apple have enough money that they could decide, yeah, I'll have that. Throw it into
we're talking trillions of dollars.
Trillions of dollars. I mean, that's way more than the Irish national debt.
I don't know, but they're making an attempt.
So they're only buying a small part of it.
I guess they've had 3,000 jobs.
Yeah, they have their European headquarters is in Cork City. Apple are different, you see. Whereas all the other tech companies have their headquarters in Dublin, Apple decided to go to Cork. And now Apple are building their data center in Galway, in Arenlor. So that's in the west coast.
Cover that slightly. We can talk about it. And then got a good story about how Los Angeles air quality is getting cleaner. Again, pollution controls work. Not a news story because, I mean, back in the 40s, you had that killer fog in London that was literally killing people. And then they decided, you know, if we stop burning coal, maybe that will help. No more killer fog. And in London, you had the smog. That was the thing about Los Angeles. It had smog. Well, the smog is going away. Good news. And I got another story about maybe consumers are getting smarter about food, and the big food companies getting worried.
No more processed crap.
I got another, I thought, interesting story. Now, you're an engineer, and I know you've worked with soil and stuff. And this is how rain is dependent on soil moisture. The amount of moisture in the land, in the ground, affects whether or not it rains.
Interesting.
Got a couple of other stories. I'm going to throw in. I don't know if you got to see our Thursday hangout. Jani, you came in on the end. I was gone by then. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And we had a couple of interesting stories talking about our friend Urine. Well, in London, they've got a urine-powered thing that's going to help provide some electricity in disaster areas. Okay.
Are they looking for donations?
Well, I don't know if you can ship. I don't know if FedEx or UPS will take urine shipments or not. That I don't know. Okay. I am going to start out with our first story about our friend Apple, and Ireland's friend, a friend of the Irish. And they're about to open, and this is February, this is about a month ago. It's a $628 million online service center in Antrim, County Galway, alongside Viborg in Denmark. Now, the one question I have there is, I never realized Ireland was next to Denmark.
Well, close enough. There's a few countries in between. We don't really care about them. UK, Netherlands, Germany.
Yeah, so right next to Denmark. We're gonna open up this.
I think what
So
they mean is they are opening an Apple center or Apple data center in Galway and another one in Denmark.
I strongly suspect so.
Yes.
Maybe the person who wrote this was drinking some Irish craft beer. I don't know.
I certainly hope so.
Okay. It's going to be for the European customers of iTunes, Maps, and iMessage, and it's due to be finished in 2017. They're going to include an outdoor educational space for locals.
Maybe if they were using Apple Maps, then Galway would be right beside Denmark.
Could be. Well, you know what? If it's in Google, if it's in a Google map, it must be right.
But if it's in an Apple map.
Virtual maps, better than the real kind. Okay, what else do I want to say? Well, they're going to have a walking trail. That'll be fun.
That's because there's no roads or public transport around that part of the country. They have to walk to get there.
And they're going to create 300 more jobs at this 628 million pound center. This is Tim Cook, your friend, Tim Cook. This significant new investment represents Apple's biggest project in Europe to date. We're thrilled to be expanding our operations, creating hundreds of local jobs, and introducing most of our advanced green building designs yet. Now, it's supposed to be completely eco-friendly. I don't have any details. I'm going to assume that might have some solar panels. How well do solar panels work in Ireland?
We have sunny days. Maybe not in Galway, though, but other parts of the country has sunny days.
That's what I was wondering.
They work. Solar panels work through clouds.
Okay.
Just not as efficiently, but they do work.
There are probably going to be other aspects of it. So it's supposed to be completely energy independent and the most eco-friendly site in existence or something. Right now, they employ 3,000 people in Cork. The country is seen as an attractive base for tech companies because the predictable weather can reduce the cooling cost for technology involved. Ireland has predictable weather?
Oh, it does, yes. It's always terrible. No, actually, this is what they're building there is one of those data centers, which is just banks and banks of servers to host all their cloud computing. And if they were to build this in California, let's say, they would have to cool it down because they'd have this thing called the sun beating on the building all day. Whereas if they build it in Galway, that's not going to be a problem. We have nice, cool, temperate climate, and even in the summertime, we rarely get up above 25. In the wintertime, we rarely get down below 0. So we are predictable. We're not like our range of temperatures isn't as we don't swing as much as other places. We don't have 3 months of snow or whatever it is you're experiencing over there.
What do the Irish think, as far as you know, your impression of Apple? Apple's this humongous company. They're help creating jobs, certainly. Real plus no matter how much they're doing, but do you think do you consider Apple a real friend of Ireland? They're just a place where they're parking some big bucks they're making elsewhere?
I think they're one of many big companies. I mean, in Dublin we have the European headquarters of Google, and we have Microsoft. And Microsoft as well announced they're building a big. They're going to combine all of their buildings into one big Microsoft campus in the south side of the city. So. I mean, we appreciate any company that comes in and employs a lot of people.
How's the Irish economy doing?
It is actually, things are a lot better these days now. 2014 was a successful year. We have returned to growth, and unemployment is still quite high. Not as high as it was a few years ago. I know that personally, but it's still about 10% unemployment, which, the government are going to lose on the unemployment, even though they've sorted everything else out. It's what they're calling it a jobless recovery.
I like that. I think in the United States, it's really hit and miss. Our unemployment rate is down to, lowest levels in almost a decade or something. But it's really hit and miss because there's still, Connecticut, where I live in Connecticut, well, the whole state, about a decade or so ago, was one of the richest states in the country. And now we have one of the worst economies in the country. The people, actually, we've lost, I know Ireland had the problem for years of losing population. My state of Connecticut is losing population. My city population where I live has dropped from 20,000 to 16,000.
Really? No, Ireland has had lost population right up until the 1980s, but even through the last 7 years of recession, the population is still growing. We're still, compared to in 1840, the population of what is now the Republic of Ireland was about 6.5 million, and today it's about 4.6 million. So we still haven't recovered. But
okay, that's all right.
The last 30 years or so, actually more, my life or so, the population has grown every year.
Well, I guess you Irish got to start listening to the Pope. You got to start having more babies. I don't know.
No, having the babies was never the problem with Irish. It was having babies that could actually stay here was the problem. Yeah. If you include all the Irish living all around the world, I'd say we're probably the most populous country on the planet.
Oh yeah.
But,
actually, that's what talking history now as opposed to science, but actually the Irish immigrants did two things when they came to America. A couple of different times we had
built
large
roads and railways.
Of the Irish, but the last time during the Civil War, we got the Irish to do two things: work in our factories and fight in our Civil War army. It was the Irish platoons in the Civil War and the Union Army that helped turn the tide in many battles. So,
I know. I visited Gettysburg last year. I heard about all the Irish. Brings a tear to your eye. Having to travel halfway around the world to fight in somebody else's war.
While I get a chance, we should start talking about, I know you have a craft beer podcast.
I do. The Irish Craft Beer Show. That's going great. I actually spent today recording another episode. I have released 13 episodes so far. I've got episode 14 ready to go, and was recording episode 16 today, actually, even though 15 isn't recorded yet, but that's the order I'm doing them in. So, yeah, I'm having fun.
What do you do on the podcast?
Well, originally it was going to be a podcast about home brewing, with a little bit of reviews of Irish craft beers. So, started off with just a few people sitting around talking about beers, but then I started going places. I've done an episode recently where a group of us went to a local microbrewery and spent a day there brewing a batch of beer. So I followed the process brewing of a big crowd of people brewing on a big brewery. Last week I actually got a media pass to go to a craft beer convention that was happening in Dublin, hosted by Ultec, which are a company that makes yeast and other food supplements like that. They're from Kentucky, and the founder was an Irish guy who spending a bit of money by hosting a big craft beer and food festival in Dublin every year. So they gave me a media pass. I got to walk around to different booths and interview brewers and food producers and all sorts of things. I mean, it's evolving. Getting out in the world, showing the planet how good the Irish craft beer scene is.
Yeah, Jani posted a link. I can't read the whole thing because the stupid screen share doesn't work for me, but ask, what does shipwrecked 170-year-old beer taste like?
Interesting. I'd say, considering beer that's about a year old goes stale, this might be very stale.
Yeah, and I apologize to the viewers. What I notice is when it moves back, it's not I'm on Internet Express right now because Chrome hasn't been working for me, and I notice it flashes back and forth differently. Okay, I'm going to segue into Irish craft beer, better beer available for us, into a story, And this was, I believe, in the Christian Science Monitor or the Guardian. I'm not sure. But it's talking about how consumers are actually beginning to make better choices, or in the case of the big food companies, worse choices. It says, this generation of shoppers has new interest and priorities when it comes to choosing what to buy at the grocery store, and big food is the antithesis of many of them. Big food brands are getting nervous. Sales of processed, packaged foods have dropped considerably in recent years, to the point where companies are frantically reorganizing and looking for ways to cut costs. There you go. You don't get better by making your product better. You get better by cutting costs.
Cutting costs, brewed by accountants.
Lay off a bunch of people. That's how you... I don't know. One of them, Campbell Soup. And as a kid, that was a big thing. I grew up on Campbell Soup. And Campbell Soup lowered its full-year results forecast after only the first quarter, and is looking for ways to save $200 million a year. Kraft's profits dropped 62% in 2014. The CEO is mentioned as saying, a difficult and disappointing year. 62%. Yeah, I kind of think that's not such a good year. Kellogg dropped its prediction for long-range annual revenue growth, which was 3 to 4%, down to 1 to 2%. 1 to 2%, and cereal sales are down 6%. Now, and another company called ConAgro, don't know what they do, but they took a smart step. They fired their CEO. So I don't see any of these companies looking to build a better product. But, and this is from my friend Tree Hugger. Tree Hugger, we are proponents of fresh, homemade, local food and beer. This is good news and an indication that consumer habits are changing. Now it says, first, a growing number of shoppers want to know where their food comes from, how it's been moving around from the farm to the plate. And farmer markets are increasing in the United States. Processed fruit, here too, yeah. Hard for me to judge. I mean, I get my picture of rural Ireland. Lots of farms and sheep.
I live in a big city. I don't know.
Yes. So Dublin has farmers markets.
We have farmers markets. It's where you go for expensive food.
Oh, expensive food. Yeah, kind of. That can be part of it.
And it's a regular shape, so you know it's craft.
Yeah, sometimes the locally grown product can be more expensive than the product produced by these big food companies because of economy of scale.
Well, I heard that in Ireland we produce enough beef to feed a country of 30 million and export most of it. Whereas if you buy beef in an Irish supermarket, it's likely being imported from somewhere where it's less expensive. Now, I do not buy beef in the supermarket. Nobody should ever buy meat in a supermarket. If you want meat, you go to a butcher. You go to a butcher who tells you the name of the cow, you know. But because Irish beef is higher quality, so it can be it's the only European beef that can be exported to the United States. We can export to Russia. We have done deals with countries all around the world. We can export Irish beef, so we get to eat the Brazilian beef or whatever is the inexpensive beef they can import for a lot cheaper and stock in the big supermarkets.
You know, we don't have butcher shops any place I can think of. Our butcher shops are in the supermarkets right now. So we don't have individual butchers anymore, except those working in the supermarkets.
Well, is it proper meat counter or is it prepackaged meat?
Oh, it's a meat counter.
My meat counter is good enough.
Talking about changing food taste, you can see that in the supermarket, because now next to the beef counter, where we got a butcher, you can talk to him, you know, just like just a regular butcher, but he's in a book shop. But we also now have a sushi chef in one of the shops.
Really?
So you can buy regular fresh sushi in the supermarket.
That's interesting. That's changing tastes.
Now, I can see just in the aisles. We've had, now this is supermarket supposedly canned food. Canned food. This is supermarket food labeled organic. I
Yeah.
do not know if it comes from a local farm. We do have a farmer's market, but in the supermarkets, I know the eggs and the milk, you can get it from a local farm. That's right on the label. But we have this huge aisles of so-called organic health foods.
I'm suspicious about anything labeled organic because they seem to be going out of way. There's certain boxes that you have to tick to be labeled organic by whatever because the organic it is a term that has grown to. It doesn't exactly mean something, but there are some organizations that give their check marks. This is approved, and so while they don't say don't use any pesticides, they say don't use these pesticides, and they have a blacklist. So you have farmers who can still use certain pesticides and still call it organic. And sometimes those pesticides aren't any better than the ones that you can't use. They just weren't on the blacklist. And
Jani posted a couple of things from our friend Arenlor, pointing out how the Irish in Pennsylvania also built the railroads, which is exactly how my grandmother's family. I don't know what part of Ireland they came from, but that's what they did. They worked on the railroads. They lived literally on the other side of the tracks, and so that again, well, East Coast it was the Irish building the railroads. West Coast it was the Chinese. And Arenlor has also posted. Let's see, it's a link. Well, I can't read it. Maybe you can, Brian. Condron Foods. Who the heck these Condron Foods people are?
Conagra Foods is an American packaged food company headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska. Conagra makes and sells products under various brand names that are available in supermarkets. So let's see what their brand names are. Brand names anywhere. I don't see list of Conagra brands. So they make. I haven't heard of any of these actually. Maybe you might. Act 2 microwave popcorn, Alexia appetizers and artisan breads, Andy Cap fries, Angela Mia.
Wait. What was
products.
That? Fries? Andy Cap?
Andy Cap, yeah.
I know Andy Cap is a comic that and he's an Englishman in a pub, quite often drinking vast quantities of beer and getting into trouble. I don't know why they would pick his name for the food.
Oh, wait a minute. They make Rotel canned tomato sauce. Yes, okay, I have heard of them.
Yeah, that's the canned products. And the labeling, you can see where the major food companies are using labeling. Now, they make claims that their products are supposedly healthier. They've cut back, I notice, in sodium. Well, that's one of the things they have cut back in, sodium. You can read the nutritional information on the can, so you can get some food that's probably healthy from the big food companies. Health per se isn't the issue as long as you go by the label. Taste is a bigger issue, and of course the idea of more locally grown stuff.
Oh, taste is definitely. I think it's something that big companies. I know from the brewing industry. I think big companies have no idea that consumers think taste is quite important. We have multiple big brewing companies in Ireland bringing out new beers that have flashy new logos and They're advertised as costing less than the craft beer, and you drink them, and they taste exactly like the reason why I went to drink craft beer in the first place, because they taste of absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's something that has obviously exploded in the United States, because when I was, 1950s or so, beer was a couple of brands. Budweiser was one, and a few brands basically. And
That's
now
because
you went to the supermarket.
you had prohibition that killed off all of the breweries, so it took a long time for the market to recover.
Yeah, but again, as I say, it was the major companies. But in the last 5 to 10 years, it's been these microbreweries. And now when you go to the beer section, I mean, you've got hundreds of different kinds of beers to choose from.
Easily.
And to me, I think of back in the 50s, if you said refined, something refined for your palate, it would be, you think of wines. You think of buying a particular wine and different wine vintages, and you had wine gourmets, etc. Now what I see is that's something similar with beer.
But then, while I like drinking from local breweries, most of the bars I go to are packed full of beers that have been imported a lot further. We have a big craze of Californian beers in Ireland at the moment, or German beers, always popular. I've even seen beers from New Zealand, whereas, most of the big breweries are just brewed from down the road. So the whole wanting to drink locally doesn't always work.
Well, for instance, if I went to a bar, 1950, and I said I'll have beer, what am I going to get? I'm going to get, I'm going to get. I'm not going to say I would like a can of XYZ. Now, my perception would be that if you go to a bar now, you have a wider variety of labels and things to choose from.
Wider variety of styles as well, which is a difference. It's not just 5 different companies making the same beer. It's 5 different companies making 25 different types of beer.
And I don't drink beer. Being a diabetic, I can't have alcohol. But the range of flavors with crafted beers is far greater. I mean, even with the things you can add to it, you have that. I mean, just almost an unlimited number of flavors.
Oh yeah, the amount of hop varieties the different hops are bred every year that give completely different flavors. It's interesting.
It really is kind of equivalent of the wine industry now, in terms
it is,
of
except you can vary beer more, because while wine the only have ingredient is grapes, with beer you have barley and hops, so you've got 2 ingredients that you can vary.
So that's true. You can control yourself the ingredients, whereas, as you say, with wine, I mean, it's going to grow or it's not going to grow, and each year is a different quality.
Well, I literally just half an hour ago, while eating my dinner, was watching a program about the Romanian wine industry, where rather than like the French wine industry that will have, depending on that year's weather, you have this vintage of wine that was a good year. The Romanian wine industry aims to, every time you buy a bottle of that wine, it'll taste the exact same as it did last year. So they will, after they're coming towards the harvesting the grapes, they will analyze them in the lab, and they will say, oh, this is a wetter year, so our wine's slightly sweeter, so we need to add this chemical which will bring down the sweetness and up the bitterness to what the normal range is. If it's a drier year and the wines are more bitter, they can add sweetener to the grapes. So when they make the wine, it's consistent. It turns out the same every year. So that was how the Romanian wine industry works.
Thinking about our friend Science Island. Okay, now Science Island, Justin Science Island, is certainly going to be out in California, near Cal Davis, and it's a nice area. So let's say we build out in California, relatively sunny.
But yeah.
So
we need water. We need water. I don't think they have any of that in California.
Well, of course, we would figure out a way how to conserve water water catchment areas. I don't know. We're all going to be brainiacs in Science Island. We're going to be figuring out how to do that stuff. So I don't think, well, I would like to, I think where we build Science Island, we will need some kind of a regular water source, be it a river or even a pond that's spring fed or something. So we're not going to rely just on what falls from the sky. How easy would it to create beer? So if we're going to have, let's say, our own brewery on Science Island, we don't want to import the ingredients. Could we grow all of the ingredients that you use in crafting a beer in a place like, let's say, Northern California?
Northern California, yes. Southern California, no. Northern California is known for its hop fields and its barley growing. It's a proper, it's a good region for growing that sort of thing, as long as you have the water. Because for every one, I can't remember what the ratio is. I think for every 1 pint of beer you have, you need about 5 liters of water. So it is very, very water intensive. You need water to grow, you need water to brew, and you need water to sanitize, to clean. You need water every step of the process in making beer. You need water. So it all comes down to water. But then again, it is once you have your beer, it is sterile, so it is an easy thing to drink. It's back before they had proper water treatment facilities. Everyone knew you don't drink water, you drink beer. Water will make you sick. If you want to stay healthy, drink beer. I think we should adopt that in Science Island.
In the chat area, Arenlor is talking about a beer they make in Pennsylvania. Have you ever heard of it?
Yingling, yes, it's one of the oldest breweries in America. Famous brewery. Don't distribute here, but I visited Pennsylvania last year, so I did get to try it.
Okay, now if we're going to have a brewery, if we're going to, we've got to. One of the things we've got to experiment with is figure out how to create beer using less water. That would be a real issue.
That's a huge challenge. I mean, on a brew day, there are different things you can do to use less water. I know I use a lot of water just after finishing the boil to cool it down from 100 degrees boiling temperature down to about 20 degrees for yeast pitching temperature. So how I do that is I have a copper pipe and it's a big coil shape. Put that into the beer. One end of the pipe connected to the cold tap. The other end of the pipe, you connect it to a bucket. Turn on your tap. Cold water goes through the copper pipe that's suspended in the hot beer, and hot water comes out the other end. And then you use all of that water, which is now hot water. You use that for cleaning up. It would be a lot easier to just throw that water down the drain and use the hot water that they already have heated. But this is, little things you can do to save water. Doesn't save much, and I would use quite a lot, I'd say, to cool. It depends on the time of year, obviously. During the winter, it's easier to cool down your beer. During the summertime, you need here anyway, the municipal water supply would be a much higher temperature during the summertime, so it's harder to cool down the beer. So you could end up using 100 liters and to make 20 liters of beer, you could use 100 liters of water just to cool it down. These are the type of things. There are better ways of just of chilling beer than I do. That's one way that you could save a lot of water just by sorting out how to chill it.
Okay, so one thing would be to recycle the water. And of course we could recycle it 2 ways. We can recycle the water that had been used and thrown away, and we can recycle our own urine after we drink the beer. There could be 2 ways we can recycle it.
We can recycle the urine to generate electricity, I hear.
That's one of the stories I've thrown in the lineup here.
That's our segue. I was trying to segue.
Let's see.
Have I jumped ahead in the running order?
No, actually, I know there's something you want to talk about. There's an article you posted on Facebook, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell us about that particular article and perhaps what you think about
Tell us or join in the rant.
it.
Basically, everybody should be watching John Oliver's show last week tonight. He is a comedian. If you haven't heard of him, he was one of the reporters on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and he took over the Daily Show while Jon Stewart was on a leave of absence, and did such a good job that HBO gave him his own show. So he's doing like a similar show to The Daily Show once a week on HBO, except rather than just making fun of Fox News or the last 24-hour news cycle, he actually a lot more research into the stories he covers. And last week he covered a story which is something that I have been arguing about myself for the longest time ever, and that is for maintenance of infrastructure. That is, our argument was that maintenance of infrastructure, it's not sexy. In fact, I would say it's not sexy. I think that most people don't know that it is done. And by infrastructure, I mean things that everybody in a civilized country uses on a daily life, and that includes roads, highways, bridges. That includes, the water pipes that bring water to your home, the sewage pipes that bring wastewater away from your home. All of these things we expect to just work, and they should just work. We all live in civilized countries. It's the year 2015. I expect that if I drive over a bridge, I don't have to worry that it'll collapse. Unfortunately, that just doesn't happen by itself. It needs people to look out for it. Every single bridge, it can collapse. The natural state of the universe is not to have bridges that are staying up and supporting you as you drive over a river. The natural state of the universe, those, if left alone, they would collapse. And generally, when you build a bridge, it would have a design life of between 50 to 100 years. That is assuming that it'll be maintained. But the main point is that the big period in the United States history for building infrastructure, correct me if I'm wrong, was in the 1950s when the highway program really took off, and most of the infrastructure in the United States dates back to the 1950s, which you'll find is 65 years ago. So most of this infrastructure, it's reaching the end of its design life. And what does that mean? That means that all those little things that can go wrong with a bridge, that's been through 65 winters, 65 years of snow falling on it, water flowing into cracks, and ice expanding and cracking it. It's had 65 years of something driving over it. Every single municipality will have infrastructure maintenance departments. They will go out, they will examine the bridge, they will notice problems before they become problems. They will see a crack and know, if nobody touches this, in 5 years' time we're going to have a problem. In 5 years' time, if you spend nothing, you're going to have a problem. If you spend money now, you're not going to have a problem. However, getting this money is difficult. Why? Because if you spend this money, nothing happens. Everyone wants to see payback for money. Everyone, it's your tax dollars. You want to know where are your taxes being spent. If you spend money in infrastructure, to the uninformed public, it's like throwing money down a drain. You don't know where it goes. Well, where does it go when it goes down a drain? It goes down a pipe. It just works, and it works because money is spent to make sure that it works. So John Oliver did a great bit where he imagined that what really needs, so that people understand what needs to be done, is that infrastructural maintenance needs to be made sexy. It needs to have a summer blockbuster made about infrastructural maintenance, because as he pointed out, every year summer blockbuster for the last 20 years has involved some part of infrastructure being completely destroyed, and he was given examples like the Transformers movies, bridges being blowing up, buildings being blown up. So he gave a trailer for the new infrastructure movie, which I think the tagline is, "If something happens, we haven't done our job right." So anyway, I watched this, and I stood up and I gave him a standing ovation at the end of this, because I'm a civil engineer. I work in this industry, and I know that every cent that needs to be spent on something, there is arguments for it, and you have to fight tooth and nail because if you spend that money, nothing happens, and nobody knows it needs to be spent. It's not like if you spend money and you invent an iPod, and suddenly the world goes mad for getting an iPod. You will say, "Oh, that money I spent, it made sense." If I spend money on paying somebody to drive across a bridge every day and seeing does the sound that their wheels make change. This is this is actually an indication that something has changed. We should investigate this further. But to the uninformed public, you're just paying somebody to drive across a bridge every day. I mean, what's going on there? What sort of scam is that? So. I mean, I'm talking. I could go on and on. I'll.
The issue in the United States is mostly no one has the money to fix our infrastructure except the United States government.
That was a point you made. The federal gas tax, which was set up to maintain the roads, has not been raised since 1993. And 1993 is 22 years ago, and there have been 22 years of inflation since then. So it's effectively zero. It is, what do they say? It is. Sorry, the figure has gone out of my mind, but it's about 13 cents on a gallon, which that's an American gallon, which I think is about 2.8 liters. So, what does a gallon of fuel cost?
Well, right now, it varies across the country. Connecticut has the highest gas tax in the country. I don't know exactly how much, maybe as much as 30 cents a gallon. But right now, it's maybe 2.8, 2.5, 2.50, $2.50, $2.60. I only buy gas once a month, but in some places it's been as low as around $2. So the price has been low, but the previous 3 or 4 years, it was around $4 a gallon. It's really dropped down dramatically. Thank you, Saudi Arabia.
And you're speaking to Europeans here. Like we've got the lowest fuel prices at the moment that I've seen in a long time, where it only costs maybe about €1.20 per liter. So that's maybe about, I know the dollar has gotten quite stronger against the euro recently, but we'll say it's about $1.50 per liter. So that would be maybe $5 a gallon, and this is the lowest price that we have seen in over a decade.
Yeah, my perception is, I don't know what the facts are, Americans, we're wedded to the car. When you were talking about the 1950s,
won't spend any money
not
on
mass
the roads.
transit. In general, I think European countries put more into mass transit. Americans, except for when you talk about within a city, like San Francisco, New York, mass transit. When you talk about mass transit for the vast majority of the country, that's not something they've ever shown much interest in. The railroads. I think there's only one railway line that is actually breaking out even, or I think it's breaking out even in the United States, and that's between Washington, D.C. and New York. The whole rest of the country, I mean, you don't have even railways, bus lines. Bus routes have been cut back in most cities because people don't use them that much. So Americans, we have been wedded to the car.
Which makes it even more surprising that you won't spend money on maintaining the roads.
You know, I don't have an answer. Well, locally. So you have highways which are fixed by the federal government, and then you have the local roads. And the local roads are in terrible shape, particularly during this winter. And a lot of that's because city budgets. Cities don't have the money, or those cities that have the money want to spend them on something else. It's not a priority, and people appear to be willing to put up with the occasional potholes and roads that are really in terrible shape.
I think it's because there's a disconnect between, like, you effectively get the roads for free. I know your income tax goes to pay for the maintenance of the road, but if I lived next door to you and you had a car and I didn't have a car, we'd still be paying the same income tax because they're the taxes that you pay on your gas tax or your motor tax, whatever. They're pretty much negligible. They don't cover the cost of maintaining it. The cost of maintaining the roads comes out of your income tax.
In effect, the federal roads, yes.
Yeah, I suppose local taxes would pay for your local roads, but supposedly, but there's still a disconnect because if we pay income tax, if we pay local tax, but you had a car, you use the roads, and I didn't have a car, I don't. We are still paying the same. So the disconnect. I think there needs to be some sort of way of the more you use the roads, the more you should pay for them. And it's just so you know that I am paying this money to make sure that this road works. There has to be some sort of connection that the gas tax that is probably a decent. It's probably the best way we have of, because the more you drive, the more fuel you need. So the more tax you should pay on that. But I am in favor of some sort of road charging, charging per kilometer. And and we're getting to the stage where everybody is carrying around a smartphone with them that knows exactly where you are at all times and sends that information to Google. Why can't we send that information to somebody who will then say, oh, well, you drove along this road at this time. Here, it's it'll cost you this amount. Same as for driving in heavy traffic. There's plenty of public transit that, if you want to use public transit during busy hours, you pay a higher ticket than when you use it during off-peak. Yet roads, no, it doesn't matter if you go out at rush hour in the morning or you drive in the middle of the night. You're not being charged any extra to drive at rush hour. And you're out becoming traffic.
In the United States, in big cities like New York, you have toll booths.
That's just New York. The reason they have that is because it's an island, and that people can see. Oh, you have to spend money to build a tunnel or a bridge to get to this island. But really, it's no different from driving across, driving across country. We have toll roads in Ireland as well. We have the motorways, the highways between cities. There's tolls on them. But that, again, people could see that there was tolls needed because of the state of how long it used to take you. We're a small country, yet it used to take, up to 5 hours to cross the country, whereas now 2, because we got better roads. But still, that is just certain roads, there's certain bridges. Like, it really should be every single meter of road that you drive on, you should pay for driving on that bit of road. It's a service. You have been provided with a service. You've been provided with a piece of asphalt which allows you to travel, and there is a disconnect in people's minds between you don't get that. Oh, I have just by moving across this piece of asphalt, I have used part of it. I have lowered its remaining life. Every piece of asphalt only has a certain number of vehicle axles that can cross it and then its life expired, has to be replaced. Just by going across it once, you have caused a cost to that being replaced, and yet you are not paying directly for that. And I'm not going to figure it out. I'm going to be the guy who builds the new roads. I'm going to be the guy who maintains it. I'm not going to be the guy who figures out how to pay for it.
I guess there's some prices there Jani is showing. Finland.
That's probably the tolls, the cost to drive into on roads in Finland, is it?
The overall the simple thing in the United States is money, its budgets, and its priorities. And our current president has talked about infrastructure programs which would create jobs. Congress.
He wants to build new infrastructure. He wants to build new high-speed railways and all this. Whereas, I think John Oliver put it great as well. Politicians like new infrastructure because they get to use a giant scissors and cut a ribbon, whereas nobody does that just because a highway has been resurfaced with a new layer of asphalt. You're not going to have the local governor getting called out and getting his picture in the newspapers because the cracks in a bridge have been sealed. Yet it is equally as important, if not more, that what you have already stays working.
Yeah, I can't speak for the whole country. I know that, for instance, the town I personally want to move to if I hit the lotto, Portland, Oregon. And one reason for that is that it's the most bike-friendly city in the country. It has good mass transportation, less of a reason to actually drive a car, although I've been told the roads are so narrow nobody wants to drive a car there. But you have some places, I think mostly more towards the West Coast, willing to spend money. That's on technology. That's not actually on the roads itself. What about self-healing concrete? Could you have a self-healing material? Because I know that, I don't know, but remember a couple of years ago I was reading about concrete that could self-heal itself.
Well, maybe. I've been doing a lot of reading in concrete lately. I haven't read about that. I just know
that would be a technological fix.
It would be a technological fix, yeah.
The other fix for the kind of thing you're talking about is if you have your self-driving car completely hooked up to the Wi-Fi, to the net, completely hooked up, then what you could have, never going to happen, but what you could have is the cloud. There's an algorithm in the cloud that says, okay, Ed, you're driving, you've driven X amount of miles. Either I'm charging your checking account or your car's going to stop unless you pay this bill.
I like the second one.
So that's a possibility. Right now, I don't know. We do need, the infrastructure is crumbling. All of the papers, Republican, Democrat, Liberal, all of the, you'll find articles in all of the papers talking about how the infrastructure is falling apart, and yet, you know,
nobody wants to pay for it.
The government argues over funds, and infrastructure is not getting what it's needs. Local governments argue over funds, and local infrastructure isn't getting it. My condominium association, we just spent $400,000 fixing the roads around. We have, when you come in, there's a circle you drive around, and we paid $330 a piece to build this new road that was falling apart. I mean, there was no choice. There was literally the you know, the gaps in the road when you drove in. Now my parking lot and several parking lots are now also terrible. The plows come and they dig up. They're just nobody's talking about building that. So what it comes down to is when it falls apart, somebody finally does something. But as much as everybody knows it's a problem. Everybody knows it's a problem, but when it comes to budget time, it's just not a priority.
Because you don't pay for it.
Maybe we need a television show you're talking about.
It comes out of a big pool of money, and it's. Can you imagine, instead of when you go down to the shop and you buy your liter of milk, can you imagine that instead of that your taxes paid for milk, and at some point the government dropped milk over to you? You wouldn't get milk that often, you know. And it's the same as it's you've been provided with a service, you should pay for it. We just have not figured out how people pay for it. So there's no monetary bonus in fixing it right now. There's going to be no money coming back by spending all this money. All that's going to happen is things are going to stay the same as they are. By not spending this money is that at some point in the future it'll cost a lot of money to replace. But you know, that's the next guy's job. My term is only 4 years. I mean, it is 5 years design life remaining on this. My term is 4 years. The next guy can worry about that. You know, this is.
I think what you're going to see in the United States is some cities taking good steps. Some cities, like a Portland perhaps, and there's others. I know the whole state of Oregon is pretty good at it. We'll have that as a priority. Much of the rest of the country won't. And it's a circle where right now nobody wants to pay more taxes, period. End of discussion. When it comes to budget time, we have a local referendum, and the city comes up with a budget, the school district comes up with a budget, and the citizens vote it down. It usually takes 3 or 4 budget cutting before the citizens pass the tax. And we now have Republicans controlling taxes, Republicans controlling the country. They want to cut tax. That's a big part of their agenda, cutting taxes. The idea is local control as opposed to federal control, and the problem with that is local governments don't got the money, and it will take federal programs, and we have to solve the problem of waste in federal programs so that the money goes to what it is supposed to go. I agree with you. You have even a president talking about infrastructure, new infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. It's really, really basic, and the money has got to be spent on the actual roads and not on creating this administrative whatever the heck happens, which happens when governments do it. That's another rant.
I think you need a commission of action on infrastructure to be formed. Who need to prepare a report on infrastructural action, and then they need to prepare a few alternative reports on infrastructural action, and then you need another subcommittee which shall evaluate the various reports and should make a recommendation that a final report of infrastructural action is. This is what we need. Anyway. Move on.
Oh, well, it's like the weather.
I'm gonna burst a vein in a second.
All right. Well, I'll talk about good news.
A lot of road rage.
Road rage.
Yeah. There you go. Maybe we could. Maybe that's what
comedy.
You could do. You could set up little entertainment centers on the highway. People when they get on their toll booth, they pay for the entertainment, and you can watch drivers getting into fights and shooting at each other or something. The road rage show. I'm going to talk about the air and pollution and how good news in California, horrible news in China. If you're in China, hey, that's too bad. You better buy your mask because you're in big trouble. But in California, particularly Los Angeles.
Well, Chinese should move to California. That's what you're saying.
There are humongous number of China. The large, well, I can't say China, but the largest. This was as of a couple of years ago. The last survey I saw, the largest population of immigrants in terms of ethnicity are Asians. Most people think of people from Mexico going north, but in actual fact, the largest number of immigrants, as of a couple of years ago, was Asians moving over from China and from Asian countries.
Wow.
But in any event, as I said, Los Angeles was a desert, so it's got low ground. It's not good. Not a lot of air circulation. So what you had was, as it grew, they stole water from Colorado when they built the dams and things, and then they built, Los Angeles. It's on this kind of plain thing, and the air circulation is bad. So all the air pollution from the cars just kind of hung over the city, and a real problem. And as this recent survey shows, this particular study, it shows how dramatically air pollution has decreased in Los Angeles and the positive effect it's having on lungs and on children's lungs. And I'll read from the article. The percentage of children in the study, let's see if this, maybe I can get a screen share link, something or other. Let's see. Can you guys see that?
Nope.
No?
Now I can, yeah. Just the top corner of it. Top corner.
Can you see my picture?
No.
Good. I'm showing you this instead of the top of my shiny head is what I'm doing. Okay. Reading from that article, which is on my site, Science Island. And there it is. There's the little link you can click on if you want to watch the show, which you're already doing. Anyway, the percentage of children in the study with abnormally low lung function at age 15 dropped from nearly 8% between 1994-98 to 6.3% between 1997 and 2001 to just 3.6% between 2007 and 2011. That compares to 2.5% by age 18 for children in the first two, they call it cohorts, which means the years, that bracket of years.
Yeah.
The first two cohorts who lived in cities with cleaner air, such as Lompoc and Santa Maria, this in California, cuts in federal funding forced the researchers to exclude those cities in the last cohort and focus only on areas with heavier air pollution. Okay, so talking about parts of California, districts in Los Angeles where they conducted this study. Reduced lung function in adulthood has been strongly associated with increased risk of respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease, and premature death. Improved air quality over the past 20 years has helped reduce the gap in lung health for kids inside versus outside the Los Angeles basin. Lung development measured by the study improved across the board. This is in the areas that they tested, inside versus outside the LA basin, regardless of education, ethnicity, tobacco exposure, pet ownership, and other factors. We expected that our results are relevant for areas outside of Southern California, since pollutants are, we found, most strongly linked to improved health. Nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, are elevated in any urban environment. Lung function testing took place in school at least 3 times for each area when the children were approximately 11, 13, and 15 years old. Students were asked to blow into a spirometer, an instrument which measures lung size and strength. The spirometer reads total lung volume as well as the amount of air that a person is able to blow out in 1 second. Air quality monitoring stations in the 5 communities took continuous readings of key pollutants over the study period, which researchers averaged to examine the extent for each area. Wait a second. I'm reading from a page. Do I have the correct page? No, I do not have the correct page. The old man just read to you from page 2 instead of page 1. Well, who cares?
We could follow.
I'm going to skip ahead to the last part. It's an environmental success story. The air has gotten much cleaner than it was in the past. The guy who conducted the study, this guy Guterman, said, "I grew up in the 1970s. Even from Pasadena, you couldn't see the San Gabriel Mountains on a typical summer day." However, he cautions, we can't get complacent, because not surprisingly, the number of vehicles on our roads is continually increasing. There's that we got to go to mass transit. Also, the activities at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, which are our biggest polluting sources, are projected to increase. This means more trucks on the road, more trains carrying cargo. And there'll be a link to that particular article for anyone who wants to read it in the show notes. So what it comes down to is a place that has the priorities, Los Angeles. When you prioritize pollution, you can do something about it. The technology exists today. You don't have to invent anything new. The technology is there today. We know the steps you need to take to cut pollution. And where they do it, we have proof how it improves the health of our children. I mean, this is science. We have the proof. We know if we do something about this problem, our children will have better lungs and will live longer.
Science works, that's what you're saying.
What about Ireland? How's your air quality?
I would say right now it is quite good. I do remember in the 1980s that we did have a small problem with smog in Dublin, and led to changes in the types of fuel we were allowed to burn. I know that smokeless coal became more ubiquitous, and eventually I think became the old style wasn't allowed. Like unleaded petrol is another another thing I remember from my childhood. But I know with the air quality, where I work in the airport, we do have to do a lot of air quality monitoring because of all those big planes in close proximity that are, burning a lot of fuel. And so as part of our license, we have to monitor the quality of air. But because the airport is located, it has to be a little bit outside the city, so there are, it's a big thing. There's less homes around, less offices. We are a little bit rural area. In fact, I think there are farms near the airport, but even though we're not that far from the city. So the air quality near the airport is actually a lot better than would be in the center of the city. So actually, even though people think of the airport as being bad for emissions, not as bad as living in the center of the city.
Do you have a problem with lung disease or with, I don't know, I'll say sinus problems or the kinds of illnesses that poor air, do you even measure air quality? Is there a site you can go on that will show you air quality?
We do. I'm not sure if there's a live site. I know I have seen in public libraries up on the wall they'll have how the air quality was in different areas of Dublin over the previous month. I'd imagine it's probably online. You've actually just made me interested. I'll check. But I know I have definitely seen it in local public library.
Yeah,
generally, Ireland is probably better than most of Europe, but that's more to do with our location being an island, whereas most of Europe is a lot more inland and a lot more urbanized than we would be.
When I go over to the go over to Google Plus, excuse me, Arenlor has posted a picture. Now this looks like some sort of a health meter. It shows 200 something, I think. I'm not sure what it means, but there are devices. This is my main point. There are devices you can use so that you can measure air quality. In fact, I would say if those wearable devices that they eventually build someday that you can use to monitor your own health, monitor the environment, so that you'll be able to say, if you're walking in an area and maybe you smell something, or maybe you can look down at your wearable device and it'll say, warning, warning, run away, or put on your gas mask or something. Arenlor says that in Pennsylvania, they have poor air quality because of the number of coal power plants. That's a big claim, and I can't tell you what the accurate information is, but the claim by our energy companies that are selling us electric power is that the plants they use have very good air quality machinery on them, and that the air quality they produce is very good, and we don't need government regulations, blah, blah, blah.
It's very good compared to what was there before.
I have my doubts.
It's compared to what was there before. It's good. I mean, if you compare it, like all the they've only done it because they were required. None of this technology would have been developed was it not required by taxes or or directives on air quality. But the emissions now, they're the chimneys, the scrubbers in the chimneys. So it's not just belching out everything, and there is like this recovery of some of the emissions and that. So it's better. It's a lot better than what was there before. But it is because of regulation that technology was developed.
Yeah.
And it's an example of where regulation worked. It was they could just pay fines and continued on polluting, but they said, well, we need something that's less expensive, so they developed new technology that means that the emissions are less, so they don't have to pay as many fines. So it's where regulation worked.
Now, Arenlor, what he was showing me was an air meter that he needs, and red means his asthma has been triggered. Yellow is bad, but normal. So he does have a device. And I would say anybody with that kind of a health issue really needs that sort of instrument, that kind of an instrument. They are available. But it's...
I've just found the website with all of Dublin's air quality monitoring stations.
Okay.
And I can download the raw data, but when I click on the report for 2012, it's giving me a page not found. But I can download all of the raw data and then import it into Excel, and I can tell you the percentage of nitrous oxide, NO2, and of Dublin City Council smoke, Dublin City Council SO2. And all the monitoring stations, so I can get the raw data from the monitoring stations, but for some reason the published reports seem to have vanished. Well, nice to know it's there.
Yeah, that.
If anybody wants to do a data analytic project on Dublin City air quality, I can provide you with all that data.
That's another tug of war we're having in the United States between one party who wants to cut government funding / taxes, and so any kind of monitoring, well, even regulation by the government. NASA is putting up satellites so that we can now monitor the environment on the whole Earth, specific places, very, very precisely. Maybe over the next 2 or 3 years, they plan to have these satellites for monitoring all kinds of things, for things like climate change, etc. So you now have information, and you will have much better information to tell you about the problem, to give you the ability to monitor steps that you take. But once again, the politics comes into play, where if the Republicans maintain control over Congress, then it's less likely that our government will do anything. The pressure then becomes more on states, and some states will do more. California will do more, Oregon will do more, and some states will do less. Tennessee, Kentucky will do less, and
How
some
about
states
how
will do
about Connecticut?
nothing.
How about Connecticut?
We're broke.
Yeah.
That's all I can say is we're broke. Connecticut is a democratic state, and if our economy improves, Connecticut would be the state that would do more to spend more on things like air quality and mass transit.
But if your economy improves, that would lead to more emissions. However, so you'd be better at monitoring these additional emissions caused by an improved economy. So it's kind of a vicious circle going on there.
Well, I'll put it this way. We will vote for representatives who will want to do more in terms of climate change and in terms of more on the environment. Connecticut residents will do that.
They'll
Actually,
want to do more. They just won't be able to actually do it.
Politically, over 50% of the Connecticut residents are independents.
Really?
So we don't trust either the Democrats or the Republicans.
Vote green.
Yes, let's see. Let's see if I can get to the right place. I hear this little bleep horn. I hear this little bell. That tells me that Arenlor has posted something in the chat area, and they have a local coal plant called the Brenner Island. It says steam electric plant. So, yay for Pennsylvania. Yay for where he lives.
Where in Pennsylvania? I was in Pennsylvania last year.
I do not know. Perhaps Arenlor. Well, he lives near his local coal plant, which is the Brunner Island, York County. He lives in York County, somewhere near the Susquehanna River.
That's a great name for a river. It's that Native American name. I love Native American names.
Let us see. Well, we'll go to energy production. Go towards a little article I found. This was in the Guardian, and it's talking about urine power.
Hey.
The screen share is not going to work with that. Okay. It's a short article. I wish I could show you the device. Brian, I wonder if you could go to story number 6. Click on the link for Science Daily, and perhaps you can screen share it and control it so we can see what this little box looks like, this little thing looks like. And I'll read from the article. This toilet, which is conveniently situated near the Student Union bar. Well, if you want to get urine, where are you going to put it? Near a bar. At the University of West England in Bristol, is proving that urine can generate electricity. The prototype urinal is the result of a partnership between researchers at the University of West of England and Oxfam, and is hoped that it will power technology that will light cubicles in refugee camps, which are often dark and dangerous places, especially for women. Students and staff are being asked to use the urinal to donate pee to fuel microbe fuel cell stacks that generate electricity to power indoor lighting. This professor, Luriopoulos, we have already proved that this way of generating electricity, electricity works. Work by the Bristol Bioengineering Center, which hit the headlines in 2013 when the team demonstrated that electricity generated by microbial fuel cell stacks can power a mobile phone. This project with X-Foam could have a huge impact on refugee camps. The microbial fuel cells work by employing live microbes which feed on the urine for their own growth and maintenance. The MFC is in effect a system which taps a portion of that biochemical energy used for microbial growth and converts that directly into electricity. They're calling it urinetricity or P-power. This technology is about as green as it gets, they say. It's as we do not need to utilize fossil fuels, and we are effectively using a waste product that will be in plentiful supply. The urinal on the campus resembles toilets used in refugee camps. The technology that converts the urine into power sits underneath the urinal and can be viewed through a clear screen. I don't know if you want to do that, but okay. The head of water and sanitation at Oxfam says, Oxfam is an expert at providing sanitation in disaster zones, and it is always a challenge to light inaccessible areas far from a power supply. This technology is a huge step forward. Living in a refugee camp is hard enough, but the added threat of being assaulted in dark places at night. The potential of this innovation is huge. And the Professor Luriopoulos, one microbial fuel cell cost about £1 to make, and we think that a small unit like the demo we have mocked up for this experiment can cost as little as £600 to set up. So it's fairly inexpensive.
Wow.
You can quit the screen share.
Okay. That is. There we are. That's
inexpensive.
Inexpensive, yeah. But it's one of those news stories that so many jokes are just rushing to your head as you're reading it. But it's these simple ideas that will end up, changing the world for the better. And this is one of them. It's.
Yeah, recycling.
Recycling.
Time and again, recycling is the key. And I know that I believe, I'm 99.9% sure in the space station they recycle their urine.
They do. Reuse, recycle. But this is something that it's solving two problems at once. It is doing something like to remove urine from it's removing a waste product from where it will cause harm, but then it's actually using that to generate electricity. It's very interesting.
Excuse me for a second. I'm going to copy a link. Well, I can do that later. Arenlor sent us a link about power design or something, but let's see, I've got another link. The Power of Poo, which of course I can't read. This is something called the Impact Design Hub. That I think I can screen share. So that's what the facility would look like. And you can see pretty terrible surroundings. And that would be another thing where in so much of the third world and in these refugee camps, you're looking for simple solutions, inexpensive solutions. You might have a third world country, they're not going to build a ginormous electric power plant or anything. They need a solution that's inexpensive and that they can build with their own technology, hopefully. Otherwise, they just have to rely on benefactors.
Yeah.
So, I can remember reading a story about in Brazil, you have these large communities, barrios or whatever they call them. I don't know, it could be hundreds of thousands of people live. And they have these little shacks, and they don't have any light. So what the guy did was he created a kind of a light bulb, and you put a little hole in the shanty, the top of the roof, corrugated steel probably, and you put it up there, and sunlight comes down, powers it in a battery, and the sunlight gets into the home. Really simple, inexpensive solution, which makes a big difference, a huge impact on a lot of people. Can go on. Is there anything else you want to rant about there, Brian?
No, I think I have enough ranting done for one day.
Okay. We've hit about an hour and a half. I've got several more stories we can go to. Do you want to go on?
I think it's time to start wrapping it up. I think I've left my wife on her own for long enough.
And in case she's worried about what you're doing, you can show her. You can prove.
I got proof. This is what I do when I'm on my own in the spare room. I talk about science.
1,300 hours, 1,300 minutes. That's Jani.
0, 13.
0. Man, we got to go to UTC. We got to forget about all these different time. You know, all this what we have, AM, PM. We got to go to UTC and just number the hours.
Yeah, I'm happy enough with that because that means everybody else will come to my time zone. It doesn't. I don't have to make any. I do have to make one. Get rid of daylight saving, but other than that, I don't care about daylight saving.
Yeah, we got to get rid of that too.
That's a question because we're getting to daylight saving time, so suddenly things are going to change. So when is daylight saving time for you?
I got no clue.
Because we're not. I know in the autumn when it went back, there was like 3 weeks or so where you were like 4-hour time difference instead of 5.
Okay.
I think it changed tonight, actually.
Tonight?
Son of a gun? I did not know this.
Oh, wow.
I'm out of the loop. March 8th. Son of a gun. You just met. I had no clue.
Whereas in Europe, I think there's another 3 weeks. So we've got now
end of March.
End of March, 3 weeks. So for the next 3 weeks, you'll be 1 hour 1 hour closer to us in time difference.
Okay, okay. I didn't think about that at all. So let's see, it's spring forward, fall behind. So we're springing forward. Spring is at the end of the year, end of the month. So that means I lose an hour, which means absolutely nothing to me because I'm retired. The only thing it will do is it'll screw out the times probably for the Hangouts, and I won't be able to figure that out. I don't know. Well, hopefully we will be able to have some more European time-friendly Hangouts. Try to have it once a month. It's going to come down to, well, really, Brian, it's going to come down to a large part to your schedule. You're basically my European co-host. Jani shows up anytime, night or day. He's there like 4 o'clock in the morning my time. So I don't have to worry about Jani.
I sleep.
So what I'll do is, when you get around to it, maybe once a month or something, just send me a little message on Facebook, and I'll schedule a European time-friendly hangout. Otherwise,
sometime I will try to join into your Thursday one at some point. I mean, a lot of times the hangout is still going when I'm getting up on Friday morning to go to work. I check in, and sometimes the hangout is still going.
The key is
this week it was for me 11 a.m. when it's still up.
Oh, that's crazy.
It comes down to Justin. The key to long hangouts is
But
Justin.
Ed and Dale wasn't there that time.
Justin can go on for hours. He's a great guy to have in these hangouts. He can go on for hours. Pamela is great. So if those two people are in the hangout, there's a good chance when you're getting up in the morning, they're in it. And it'll be the next
problem
one.
with the problem with the European time friendly was that they're the like with Australia
actually,
and San Francisco, it's like the other side of the planet. So it's quite unlikely we'll ever overlap in time zones.
For others, it's evening, but for Europeans, it's morning.
Yes, I remember the one time I joined in the TWIS after show. I had to get up at 5 a.m. I think I got up to join in the TWIS after show, and everyone was surprised to see the sun rising behind me while it was evening time for everyone else. But yeah, I won't really be getting up at 5 a.m. for a hangout.
And
Well, maybe
Yanni,
if it coincided with a Formula One race, I do get it. Doesn't matter where in the world Formula One are racing, I am getting up to watch it live. So.
and Yanni's got to take care of himself. Got to make it to the next hangout.
Next weekend is Formula One racing. First season.
We have the Australian Grand Prix. So if we have a hangout before the Australian Grand Prix, I'll be staying up all night for that.
Well, you know what you can do if you have the Grand Prix in Finland. You do it on ice. I saw a YouTube video about a competition in Finland. People were jumping in ice and sliding on ice and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't know. So the Finns love their winter.
Lots of ice.
Okay, guys.
Free time.
So.
I will stop. I have to go through first step.